Welcome back to JCC Voices, presented by Guardian Storage. It is great to be back here with you, both physically and emotionally. As you know, I never leave too far away from Pittsburgh, so really good to be back. Today we have two wonderful guests with us, Brigadier General in Reserves Nitzan Nuriel and Ahmed Fouad Al Khatib. Brigadier Nuriel will tell more about himself and his background in just a moment, but he's been instrumental in the building up and structuring of the IDF as we know it, and as such, one of his primary roles right now is commanding over the Juniper Cobra joint U.S.-Israel military exercises. And Ahmed Fouad Al Khatib is someone who's a prominent voice within the, I would say, both U.S.-Israel relations space, but certainly from the Palestinian vantage point, bringing a voice of reason in many locations where that is absent through his position in the Atlantic Council. And really just honored to have both of you here today. Again, we're going to get into your stories in just a minute, but maybe perhaps by way of introducing this conversation to our audience, I'll say that one of the plagues that is not specific to the Jewish community, but certainly we have plenty of it, and it is plaguing everyone in the world, is the polarization that is happening all over the place, and the inability to have difficult but really important and crucial conversations that are exiting the confined spaces of echo chambers. And that's one of the things that we're trying to model through the 6-part in-depth Israel series that we have here in partnership with the the JCC in Pittsburgh. And that's why we love bringing speakers like yourselves to hear different, varying perspectives and to try and step into other people's shoes in ways that allow and enable empathy and understanding and shift away from this discourse that we're so unfortunately used to in our circles. So with that, you know what, Ahmed, why don't we start with you? Would love for you to just say a few words about yourself, your background, where you come from, how you've come to work in the space that you do.
Well, thanks so much again for having me. I truly appreciate it, and I will just start by sharing, as I always do, that I speak for myself. I've never claimed to speak on behalf of Palestinians or on behalf of Gazans. I think that's important because there are a lot of people out there who claim to, and that's part of the problem that we have. There are people who are disconnected, who are not really authorized to speak on this issue doing so. But I think it's an important point of humility. So I came to the United States in 2005 as an exchange student with the U.S. government. It was a State Department post 9/11 initiative to build cultural bridges between the Arab and Muslim world and the United States. So the theory was live with an American host family, go to school for a year, and then go back to your respective homeland and build bridges and inform about what the United States is, what Americans are like. I left July 1st, 2005, 1 month before the withdrawal of Israeli settlements, or what's known as the disengagement, a time of immense uncertainty. But I also will share that a time of immense optimism in Gaza among the people. I'll never forget my uncle Riyadh, who was a worker in Israel and lost his job because of the Second Intifada. And he was one of the last people I saw in Gaza. And he said to me, Ahmed, inshallah, when you come back, things would have been better and we'll be open back up and I'll be working in Israel before you know it. Upon completing the program, I tried to go back to the Gaza Strip in June of 2006. But right as I was about to cross the Rafah border crossing, which is how 99% of Gazans enter and leave, Hamas abducted Gilad Shalit. And that was in June of 2006. And 3 weeks later, Hezbollah did their own attack and abducted Israeli soldiers who we found out were later killed. And so I was stuck in Egypt, no prospect of going back home for several months until, thankfully, a network of human rights and peace activists in the United States, including my then host mother in the San Francisco Bay Area and California, were able to organize to bring me back. And when I came back, I started applying for political asylum. I was 16 at the time, was 17 when I interviewed for asylum. The very day of my asylum interview was June 14th, 2007, which is the very day that Hamas violently took over the Gaza Strip and ejected the Palestinian Authority. So I keep mentioning those dates, in 2005, July 1st, and in June of 2006, and in June of 2007. My lived experience is heavily tied with the experience of the disengagement, the failed elections in Gaza, Hamas's rise, and then Hamas's takeover. And thankfully, I received political asylum in the U.S. I was actually the first Palestinian from Gaza to get asylum because of Hamas's takeover. And while here, I finished my academic studies, but I was always motivated to be of service to my folks in Gaza in particular. I connected with Palestinian Americans and felt sometimes disheartened by the disconnect in the discourse between Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, Palestinian Americans, and by what folks in Gaza, especially those who live under Hamas, are saying and thinking. On the other hand, I also began building relationships with a large swath of the Jewish, pro-Israel, self-identifying Zionist communities here in the diaspora. I was very curious. I'd never met Jews or Israelis while I lived in Gaza. And so that has been a defining component of my life that would then come into play after October 7th. I'll just briefly mention that right up 10 years ago, I participated in I launched an initiative, to try to build an internationally run IDF Israeli approved airfield in Gaza that Hamas wouldn't have any control over, as a way of creating strategic development in Gaza that smothers Hamas's ability to launch future wars, if you will. And that experience was my introduction to the value of working with Israelis. And finally, after October 7th is when my life was turned upside down, and I began both speaking out against what Hamas had done, the discourse in the diaspora, but also against the dehumanization of Palestinians and wanting to create a new perspective, a new narrative that held multiple truths.
Thank you, Ahmed. Nitzan, would love to hear a little bit about your path, where you come from in Israel, how you managed to stay that long in the IDF uniform, and what some of those major milestones look like for you.
Thanks for having me. This summer I'm going to be 67. 30 years of military experience in active duty, up the rank of Brigadier General in many positions in the West Bank. I was the territorial commander of the area of Nablus, 94-96. Actually, I was the one that implemented the Oslo Agreement in this area. Also deputy commander of the division of Gaza. So I have a lot of experience dealing with the Israeli challenges, security challenges. Still in reserve in many positions, including the cooperation with the U.S. overall agencies, dealing with how to protect the state of Israel, how to create better region. And it's always a challenge for all of us. Running 2 charities today dealing with PTSD. I also believe, if I can say something about the Palestinian society, they also need very strong efforts to deal with PTSD. I believe that there are many, many Palestinian family members, kids, women that no one really take care of those needs. And without taking care of those needs, we may keep some very tough problems that without bridge them, we may keep some of the problem on the table rather than to solve them. Beside that,
Before you continue on your milestone path, maybe Ahmed, just a quick question: do you know of any organizations in Gaza that are operating on that front?
So there were some efforts for sure. I mean, one of the things that I noticed over the last 10 years is the gradual acknowledgement / normalization of the fact that mental illness, particularly PTSD, particularly not just as a result of the conflict, but also as a result of it's a tough society that's been through a lot. So thankfully, there's a baseline that began acknowledging that instead of just saying, like when I grew up, and I am somebody who has dealt with mental illness. My parents would be like, here's a Quran, read the Quran and God will heal you, or go to pray, or like just the devil's possessing you or something like that. So there's some movement. Unfortunately, it's not at the scale.
Well, perhaps you've seen it here first. Maybe there's a collaboration in how to create some groundswell.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate. I do appreciate you recognizing that, though, because, like I said, it's multi-tiered. If you look at Gazan society, just since the war,
Sir, it's all about people.
precisely.
And if you don't take it seriously, you can miss the point, meaning they have their own needs, we have our own needs, and by nature, you need to compromise. If you don't know how to compromise, it's like declaring war forever. And I believe that we all need to compromise.
This is lovely and nice, but let's take us to a zone that might be a little bit more of friction. Nitzan, you, I was going to get to more milestones in your career, but maybe let's harp on what Ahmed said before, which is both the disengagement, maybe through your lens in the IDF and how you experience that, but then and what that, from your perspective, what that meant for Israeli society. And then on the flip side, also what Ahmed mentioned in terms of creating some sort of aviation center or a landing strip in Gaza from which there could be a real trade and potentially freedom of motion, what that meant for you, again, using your security cap and what that looked like then in the years that Ahmed was talking about, but what that looks like today from your perspective.
Okay, I don't want to play the blaming game, but sometimes you have to provide some experience, some examples in order to draw the differences. If you ask some of the high-rank Israelis back in 93, 94, when we start implement Gaza and Jericho first, and I remember that day, I remember the days of...
Again, Gaza, Jericho first. This is the initial implementation phase of the Oslo Accords.
Yes, that was the first phase of the Oslo Accord. And I remember the day we all were sitting next to the TV, very much excited to see maybe the new horizon of the Middle East. And the Intel guy will tell you that in that specific moment, the guy who led the Palestinian Authority at the time, Arafat, started cheating us. In the same car he entered Gaza through Rafah crossing, he had two people in the car without Israeli permission, which was agreed upon the sides, and weapon systems. And for someone who wants to build a trust, it is almost unforgivable. Speaking about the disengagement without touching the Israeli politics. I'm not a politician. I'm trying to avoid politics. Mm-hmm. The disengagement was a step taken by the Israeli government saying the following.
I just want to give some context to our listeners.
Go ahead.
In 2005, Israel unilaterally disengages from the Gaza Strip, which means stepping away from the Oslo Accord agreements up until that point, which mandated that you split the territories of Gaza and the West Bank into areas A, B, and C. C under joint military control on the Israeli side and civilian control on the Palestinian side. And Israel said, no more. Area C is also in Palestinian control. we are going to completely unilaterally withdraw. And out of all people to conduct this disengagement, it was none other than Ariel Sharon, who was considered by many the father of the settlement movement in Israel.
Yes.
Continue.
At that time, I was the head of the Foreign Relations Division, and I've got the mission to coordinate the security side with the Egyptians. At the beginning, we had some thoughts that we'll stay in the Philadelphia corridor for security, to try to prevent smuggling and things like that. But by the end, Sharon said, if we really want to create a new atmosphere, we need to leave all Gaza Strip, including areas which will belong to the JNF, Jewish National Foundation. Meaning, if you take the old map of Gaza and compare them into the borders just after the disengagement, Israel gave up Israeli lands. It was a bit secret for the beginning, but the northern side of Gaza, the area of Sinai and so on, was pure Israeli soil. But he said, in order to create a new atmosphere, we should live till the last inch. No arguments regarding borderline. And again...
And as good measure to that point, he also withdrew from 4 settlements in the West Bank.
Yes,
Yeah.
in order to create what he considered at that time a new atmosphere. Many discussions regarding should we do it with the Palestinian Authority or without them, what should be the Egyptian role, and so far and so on. By the end, we left Gaza for good. It's become illegal for Israelis to move to Gaza. And I don't want to be cynical, Gaza became an area free from Jews. And for us, it's a kind of a sentence that reminds us very tough day for the Jewish nation. Gaza became a place which Jews are not allowed to live in, both from the Palestinian Authority perspective as well as from the Israeli government. I was then in a position and physically evacuate people from their houses. Physically. It's not pictures. And I'm still in a very good connections with the same family I evacuate from the Vet Kalim. Just to tell you the Israeli story, when we did it, both of them had 5 kids. Today, they have 14 kids. It tells you something about some side of the Israeli society story.
It's also probably the closest Israel has almost come to civil war from within.
Yeah. People keep saying, I couldn't find any evidence, and it's maybe something new, that when Ariel Sharon decided to implement the disengagement, he actually did it in order to save the Israeli villages in Judah and Samaria. He said something like that. The national trauma from the disengagement will be so big and so large, so no one whatsoever will do the same in Judah and Samaria. Yes, he gave up 4 settlements. I've been there as well, Homs, Sanur, and so on. But it was kind of give and take.
So I want to move to you, Ahmed, because what I oftentimes hear, and I think this is an argument that it's chicken and the egg, very difficult to make sense of where reality lies and where some of the narrative versions begin. But the question of when Israel disengaged, is that a misnomer? Calling it a disengagement rather than completely locking in Gazans to a confined space and making that a problem that Israel no longer has to deal with, so to speak. Is that where do you sit with that?
Certainly. So my views on this have gone through multiple iterations and evolutions based on the more time has gone by, the more I've spoken to PLO officials, Palestinian Authority officials. I've seen actually classified PLO and PA documents from 20 years ago. I have spoken to what you would call technocrats, professionals who were engaged by the World Bank and others in preparation of the disengagement as it was about to unfold. And so, generally speaking, my attitude is that the disengagement was a unique opportunity, regardless of what is said about Ariel Sharon's. One of the dominant narratives right now is, well, actually, Ariel Sharon said that I want to do it to kill the two-state solutions. I want to do it to
that's
something
similar to what
what you're
said.
sharing.
Yeah.
Now, and in so doing, or in so saying, or in so plotting, he basically set a trap for the Palestinians. Just because someone set a trap for you doesn't mean you have to fall in it. And so I believe there was a missed opportunity to demonstrate what effective Palestinian self-governance can and should look like. I believe there was an example to build a model for what a military occupation-free West Bank, Judea and Samaria can look like, to actually bypass the goodwill of someone like, I'm saying goodwill in quotes, to be honest, of someone like Ariel Sharon, and show the entire world that when given a fair opportunity, the Palestinian, and with adequate support, the Palestinians are absolutely capable of building of nation building, of basically redefining the parameters of who they are as a people, what this future state is, so that it's not just a platform for attacking Israel, so that it's not just about threatening the existence of Israel, or just buying time until we're powerful enough to attack Israel. So that is the core and foundational view of mine that I maintain, and I work really hard to try and demonstrate that while and communicate to Palestinians, to academics, to journalists, to experts, to the diaspora pro-Palestine people, that while there is very much so an asymmetry in power dynamics between Israel and the Palestinians back then and now, there very much so was and remains a degree of space for Palestinian agency, accountability, and responsibility. I have spoken to someone who worked closely, Palestinian officials who worked very closely with the head of the World Bank, and I don't know why I'm blanking out his name, but the gentleman who invested in saving the greenhouses in the settlements. And basically what I've heard from him matches what I've heard from multiple other sources. And this goes to now stepping back from my own views to, could there be a case made that the disengagement was doomed to failure? There's a view out there from elements of the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, those guys, that it was absolutely doomed to failure because they were in no shape to be able to stand up to Hamas militarily. They didn't have the manpower.
I just want to clarify the claim. The claim is that Israel knew full well that the polls do not look good for the PA and the PL, right?
And even put aside the polls, this is before the electoral process. I'm talking in terms of the power, the monopoly on violence, the monopoly on
weapons.
power, which is the measurement of what a successful versus a failed state is. The Palestinian Authority, and I've seen the document, and Israeli intelligence, of course, has those documents, from 2003 all the way to 2005. I was seeing they have the preventative security, they have the 17 force, they have the national security device, they have the police force, they have like 5, and then they have
Hamas.
the naval.
the Palestinian Authority.
The Palestinian Authority. Okay.
They have 5 different security services.
By purpose.
Well, exactly, like fiefdoms. And I saw like one assessment internally that said, basically these security services became an unemployment program. a lot of these security guys like didn't know what they were doing. There was only one security, according to this document that I saw, that said the naval police, which there is no navy, but it's called naval police, was actually the only capable police unit that was not very corrupt, etc. But they were saying that basically, in terms of the space that, like Gaza, the vacating of the settlements was going to create, we don't have the manpower, but we don't have the skilled manpower to take it over and to slowly police it. My guy, who's not a PA dude, the guy who worked for and I actually did a viral post on this on my Twitter about the World Bank and saving the greenhouses, etc., who said in like less than a week, and he spoke to them. He was coordinating with Hamas's like divisions. You hear about the different divisions. He was trying to say, can you guys like we're trying to do these projects? Can you guys like not enter these areas? Can you? He said within 1 week, Hamas, without in full gear, basically, like within 1 week, basically Hamas had asserted its presence. They didn't take over, but they asserted their presence on all the vacated territories of the settlements, such that, what does that mean, asserted their presence? It meant that at any time, Hamas's militants could go to this spot, this spot, this spot, even if there were Palestinian police or security forces here and there. There was a de facto agreement at that time between Hamas, a disengagement of their own. This is what they described it, that when Hamas wanted to go to one area, they would actually inform the PA and the PA would retreat. Hamas would do its thing and then the PA would come in. It was a joke. It was a total joke. So going back to the blame game, and certainly not me trying to play it, there's a very robust perspective among and a resentful point of view within the quote unquote moderate Palestinian authority or elements of the Palestinian Authority and PLO that say we were set up for failure. We didn't have the time. Like why did the disengagement, for example, they say, have to happen all at once? Why wasn't it done in phases, to where if you take out the Netzarim corridor alone, or if you take out the stuff in the north, or if you focus on the Gush Katif, man, I remember it. So the complex and the checkpoint that we had to go through was a big part, it was a big chunk of Gaza that Gazans haven't had access to for decades. All of a sudden, it was just like, it was the Wild West. It was like the conquest. Yeah. So anyway, that's where I'm trying to hold space for the two perspectives. That ultimately, I hate to use this word, but let's use it. The blame rests squarely on the Palestinian National Project, the Palestinian political factions, and those who to this day refuse to hold Hamas and to a certain extent the Palestinian Authority responsible for squandering a historic opportunity to double the size of the peace movement in Israel, to provide a role model and an example for what success looks like, and to show the world that we can succeed in the West Bank as well.
Okay, Nitzan, do you have anything to add on that, or from your perspective?
Yes. Everybody has his own experience. I need to go back 10 years before the disengagement. As I told you, I was the territorial commander of the area of Nablus, and I remember the night which I got the feeling that the Oslo Agreement concept is not mature enough. I succeed to convince the Central Command commander to let me go into common operation with the Palestinian security forces. It was a period which we had many suicide bombers in Israel, and I managed to convince him and the SA that let us go together, me and my troop, Colonel Ibrahim, the Palestinian commander of the area of Nablus, and together we'll conduct a large operation to arrest Hamas member. And we did it. It was very successful. We captured many terrorists, many of everything. Few days after that, I've got a phone call from Colonel Ibrahim crying like a baby. And I was very surprised. And I asked him, what happened? There is any problem at home? Do you need any help with your kids? He said, no, but I need to see you urgently. I said, okay, we coordinated. He came to my office. And again, he was crying like a baby. And then he told me the following. You remember the night that we went together and we arrested many Hamas members? I said, of course I remember. It was a very successful operation and it was kind of a model for all the area. And he told me the following. I've got a phone call from Arafat to release those Hamas members that we arrested and you left in our side. Because we agreed that we'll take few, they will have few, and from there we shall see. And he said the following, what should I do? I risk my life to arrest them. They all know where I'm living. They all know my family. And now I have to release them, and they can run after my family. So what should I do? That was kind of a moment for me to understand that the overall Palestinian structure is not mature enough to run a state. What can be done today, it's a different story. But for me, the disengagement was kind of experiment that most of us knew that it's not going to work. And yet, it was important to take the chance. I don't want to quote anyone, but very high officer told us, if we figure out that that was a mistake, we can fix it. If we need to rebuild all the settlements, we can do it. It will cost money, but this is a step which you can really, in a way, reverse.
So I want to switch gears for a minute, but I do feel the need to give a bit of a disclaimer to our audience, which is that this little trip down memory lane is not just parsing out history and figuring out where different narratives stand. This debate over the disengagement is still living and I would say very much alive in the Israeli discourse. After October 7th, all the more so. The question of whether or not Israel made the right move then is central to the debate about what to do about the Palestinian question today. And so much so that we see in every successive poll in Israel that the Israeli public has really shifted over to the right, specifically on the Palestinian question. The people who make the most poignant cases of why that shifted to the right talk specifically about the disengagement, citing it as, well, you see, we needed friction, military friction within the civilian population in order to control the fact that something like October 7th wouldn't happen. So that's being floated out there all the time. It is part and parcel of everyday life in Israel as we know it today, and therefore very much not a trip down memory lane, but rather talking current events.
Let me try to draw it differently. And again, for many years I was busy about what are the potential solutions. And generally speaking, by the end, we have three main topics that are open topics on the table, and we need for a moment to analyze them. First and foremost is border security. Now, it's not a joke. We can finalize it within 5 minutes, including the coffee break. The second topic is the right of return, which we cannot solve between us and the Palestinians. You need the Arab states for that. And last but not least is Jerusalem. We cannot solve the issue of Jerusalem without the Muslim world. So talking about, let's say, tense between us and the Palestinians, it's only 30% from the problem. And as I said, border and security can be solved, not easily, but can be solved.
Yeah, I often talk about this when I'm meeting with different groups. I say the topic of the West Bank and how to solve that conundrum it has been solved in the past, at least on paper. From there till actually signing on the dotted
And
line
yet
is
we
a
have
very
our
different
own
thing.
problems. As a metaphor, I keep saying that the state of Israel is like a marathon man that does not know where the stadium is. Because we need to take a decision. What do you want to do? What type of state we would like to be?
So may I...
And those are big questions that a bit above the Israeli-Palestine conflict, even though this is a conflict which we need to solve.
Yeah. Quickly say what you want to say, and then I want to
pose a brief comment and pose a quick question to you. The brief comment is, and I actually have a 20,000 word piece coming out very shortly that talks about the history of Hamas and a fatal error in the 90s and in the early 2000s is that Arafat, very much so, I think he tried initially to absorb Hamas by not arresting them. He thought he could play nice with them, manage them. But I actually think, and I have other Fatah officials who told me that towards the very end, when he felt that the Israelis betrayed him, quote unquote, according to him, he was actually using Hamas. He was playing a double game. So I very much so, and a lot of people in retrospect look back and think that it was a fatal mistake that Arafat didn't decapitate them early on. But here's a point that many people in Gaza, the popular street, and contrary to the audience, contrary to public belief, and this is a central tenet of my persona since October 7th, is to highlight that this narrative of they're all Hamas, they're all with October 7th, every Gazan had a hostage hiding under their pillow, is nonsense. The majority of the people of Gaza are against Hamas. It doesn't mean they love Israel. It doesn't mean they're ready for peace. It doesn't mean they're Zionist or pro-Israel. But the majority, and there's a ton of other reasons we can talk about later if we want, but many of civilian people in Gaza who are anti-Hamas will pose the following question. In 2007, the day that I had my asylum interview that I shared, June 14th, 2007, when Hamas violently took over, Israeli surveillance, Apache, Cobra, all sorts of, and F-16s were all overhead in Gaza. They saw what was happening. They saw Hamas taking over. When Hamas was in its infancy, quote unquote, as a governance apparatus, why didn't the state of Israel or the Israeli military, you mentioned that if we need to reverse this step, we can reverse it. If we need to rebuild, there's this sense that powerful elements in Israel, at worst, were complacent and just got lazy and didn't want to deal with confronting Hamas the minute they took over. At best, that this was actually the completion of Ariel Sharon's original vision, which is let's let them fall into this trap. What do you think is the reason why early on we didn't have a situation where Israel got rid of Hamas?
The short human being memory can a bit confuse us. Based on the Israeli experience from Lebanon, May 2000, I was then the J3 of the Northern Command, so I very well know about the way Hezbollah took over the security zone. They did it by civilian walking from what we call the red line through the security zone. And I remember the meeting because the Chief General Staff at that time, Shaul Mofaz, was sitting next to me. The Northern Command Commander, Gabi Ashkenazi, was sitting next to me. And we asked ourselves, are we going to open fire? We had helicopter attack. We had aircraft. But upon the Israeli ethos, even after October 7th, open fire directly in order to kill civilians, it's not in our list. We do it only when we don't have any other choice, and the price, if we don't do it, going to be very high. So see what happened in Gaza by 2007. Hamas take over. And in a way, the people support him. What could we do? Throw bomb on them?
Well, some people supported them, not many. I mean, half of Gaza.
The atmosphere on the street was kind of a holiday. We finally get rid of the corrupting PLO managers. So, based on our experience back to May 2000, Israel cannot choose who is going to lead the other side. It's not, in a way, it's not our business. And remember, we were trying to do it in Lebanon in '82. Look for the Christians as our ally and move others. It's failed. The main Israeli lessons learned, even today, we cannot take decisions who is going to lead our neighbor states.
That still doesn't answer the first part of the question, which has to do with the preemptive measures, creating fertile ground for disengagement so that you don't have whatever ensues.
Let's make it clear. Let's make it clear. We were much against the elections in Gaza. Mm-hmm. We were forced by Condoleezza Rice and others to, in a way, to approve it.
So it's the Americans' fault.
Easy. Absolutely. So was the PA. I spoke to Abu Mazen's inner circle. They said, basically, Condoleezza Rice forced them.
Yeah.
And they warned her. They said, don't do it. This is a mistake. And the documents, Hamas fooled Shikaki's polls. That's why I tell people, stay away from Shikaki. Hamas fooled the polls to show that they don't have that much support to make sure Condoleezza, because if Condoleezza Rice said, if Shikaki's polls show overwhelming support for Hamas, we cancel the elections. So Hamas told their guys, they know they're masters, the Muslim Brotherhood of manipulation.
Again, just a quick explainer. Dr. Khalil Shikaki is a major pollster lives mostly in Ramallah and is considered both by Israel and Palestinians to be the primary source for polls conducted in the West Bank and in Gaza.
But so the Palestinians and the Israelis were united in opposing the elections that we knew we weren't ready for. You don't think there was any point of leverage that both parties could have come together and put up a wall against the Bush administration?
It's not a joke. Where gorilla eat their lunch? Whatever she wants, she is the gorilla. Mm-hmm. When the United States decided to do something, you cannot really stop them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to end with a question, maybe more of a softball. We each wear, the three of us, but this is aimed at the two of you, different diasporic lenses. Ahmed, you being a now Palestinian Gazan living in the diaspora, living in the United States, and Nitzan, you an Israeli, but your unique lens is someone who speaks quite often to mostly American audiences about the Israeli predicaments, mostly on the geostrategic front. So what I would love for each of you to do is take 2 minutes and maybe run through where you think the major flaw lies in diaspora conversations, and then how you fix it. It's not a softball. It's a serious question. But Nitzan, where do you see some of the mismanaged conversations that are taking place, and how do you account for them?
I believe that if the Palestinian nation, and I consider them as a nation, would like to study how to build up a nation, they should follow the Israeli and the Jewish steps, which we did 100 years ago. The major Jewish institute and structure was established by us before we had a state. Mm-hmm. All the agencies which we know today. And this is something that not exists in the Palestinian side because of many reasons. If they really want to follow the way we established our state, they should copy that.
That's nice, but we have flaws inside the Jewish community, quite significant ones. If you look at some Gallup polls and others, you'll see that we're inching towards a majority,
no doubt,
par excellence within the Jewish community that wants nothing to do with the state of Israel. So we have our issues.
Speaking about 100 years ago, the state of Israel actually were built by the muscles of the Jewish communities all over the world. And this does not really exist in the Palestinian side.
I agree.
And you cannot jump from 0 to 100 and have a state or half state or kind of autonomy if you don't have strong institutions.
Yeah. But on the part that you can control, Nitzan, so the conversation that you're having with your audience is sometimes they're Jewish. What do you think can be bridged? How can you help bridge some of these differences? Right, so many people. It's not certainly outside the Jewish community. The entire world on the diplomatic front is shifting away from Israel. But I'm honing in specifically on the Jewish community and the Jewish community here in the diaspora. How do you counteract that?
Above all, it's become more and more complicated because people have different opinions regarding life. And there are enough people saying that the way we manage the state of Israel, it's not the right way. The way we control even the Israeli Arabs. They are Israeli citizens. And yet, many of them believe that they are not really part of the society. And it's very tough to convince those who are not living in Israel how to manage those type of conflict. Because we do have many conflict among the Israeli society. If you can touch for a moment the religious side of it, unfortunately, for many years, the state of Israel picked the Orthodox versus all the rest. This is not the right things to do. Judaism should accept many type of what does it mean to be a Jew. I'm keep telling the Orthodox leader, don't teach me what does it mean to be a Jew. I know what does it mean. Don't count how many times I'm going to the shul. Don't count how many times I'm doing so and so. I'm consider myself as a very good Jewish guy. So those some of big issues that the state of Israel is not smart enough to manage upon all the community overseas. And this is one of the biggest problems we have today.
I appreciate that. Ahmed, on your front.
Oh, where to begin? I mean, the challenge is unfortunate. I mean, it's
a sizable diaspora community, right? I mean,
and precisely because of the size of the community is why it pains me to see the numerous missed opportunities for real impact that can actually make a difference in the lives of the Palestinian people, in the discourse, and like I always say, I can almost understand why folks in Gaza or folks in the West Bank with the hardships of life there have a hard time thinking strategically, thinking long-term. They lack the resources. But it is therefore contingent upon the diaspora communities who have the success academically, professionally, financially, and otherwise, who are some of the most, Palestinians in general in the United States, in Europe, in Latin America are some of the most successful individuals in business, in academia, and otherwise.
This is one of the reasons why most of the Arab states hate the Palestinians.
Because they take away all their economic opportunities. This isn't due to the lack of resources or talent, but it's due to a mindset. Unfortunately, and let me just narrow it down to a post-October 7th reality, and I so appreciate what you said. You literally took the words out of my mouth.
In fact, I've heard you say those words
like
in the past.
The infrastructure. I envy the Jewish community for the amount of infrastructure that exists. Some of my Jewish friends say we have too many organizations, too much infrastructure, and maybe there's validity there. But like, if you're
2 Jews, 5 synagogues, absolutely.
But beyond the synagogues, you have the ADL and AJC, you have the Jewish Agency and the Zionist Organization of America and the Zionist Congress Worldwide. And then if you're a centrist, you have the Israel Policy Forum. And then you have Hillel. And then you have Atid on college campuses. And then you have the federations and the JCCs and the JCRCs. And then you have like the endless amount of organizations that support communal, political, across the spectrum needs for the young people, for the old people, for the Jewish family services, the ones that are doing charity, like ones that are addressing a myriad of issues, versus if I am nominally a quote-unquote pro-Palestine student, what are my options on a college campus? It's Students for Justice in Palestine, which basically has become Students for Jihad in Palestine. That's what I call them. You have CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which is basically half Muslim Brotherhood, half Hamas supporters. And then you have something like the ADC, Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. Like, you have like a pathetic amount of non-existent of organizations or non-existent infrastructure that just doesn't keep up with the diversity, the intellectual diversity of our community members. I speak to people all the time who are opposed to Hamas, who are like, what are we doing on college campuses? What are these encampments? Why are we? They're like, I'm not a socialist. I want to make money. Like, I don't want to have to be a Democrat or this or whatever. And I mean, I myself, I'm a Democrat, to be clear. But like, so what if some folks want to openly be diverse on the political spectrum, but they're like, I started speaking out against Hamas, and then I can't get play dates for my children, or the halal store or the Palestinian market people, they look at me weird, or the community center or the mosque people don't like me all of a sudden. It's like there's an enforced conformity and forced cohesion that somehow, if you criticize Hamas, or if you say, we started this war, this didn't have to happen, this is a disaster, this is horrendous, 20 years of this, we've wasted opportunities, that automatically translates to, you support Bibi, huh? You support the killing of children, huh? How much are the Zionists paying you, huh? Like, there's zero capacity for holding multiple truths. And I'm like, what is this? Or the fact that, like, I have a degree in intelligence and national security. And some people were like, ooh, this is evidence that you're Mossad. You know, like simplistic discourse that does us no favor. Lastly, I will say that there's an abdication of responsibility to build bridges with the Jewish community. There's a false narrative that we will achieve a free Palestine by dismantling the Zionist entity, in quotes to the listeners, by, getting rid of Israel, by pushing like this maximalist rhetoric. And I'm like, excuse me, guys, Israel exists. Not only is it powerful and going to continue to exist, but it's actually wrong to, like, there are people, they're a nation, there are like 3 generations at least of Israelis that know nothing but this place as their home. And so let's actually move beyond that, and let's figure out, instead of the us versus them, it's us and them, because that is what's going to build the bridges. And the good news is there are many in my community, in Gaza, in the United States, and elsewhere who think that way. The bad news is they're either afraid to speak out, they're smothered, or they're unable to share their opinions openly.
Thank you. Very helpful. We did well on the diagnosing the issues and the problems. We didn't get to the point where we are actually providing solutions, but I think it's a lot of fruit for thought, and obviously diagnosing the problem is halfway there. So really, really important to raise these issues and surface them into people's minds. I want to thank my 2 guests, Ahmed and Nitzan. Thank you so much for joining us here on this session of the podcast. And until next time, we will see you there.